This is Food for Thought with Deborah Walker. Today on Food for Thought, I am interviewing Becky Walsh, who is an intuitive catalyst and is an author of a number of books and courses. But one particular book that I'm going to talk about today with her, which is called You Do Know, which is about intuition. Hi, Becky. How are you today?
I'm brilliant, thank you. Yeah, good.
Oh, I love the fact that you're brilliant.
Yeah, it's just, people say, how are you? And everyone always comes out with, oh yeah, I'm fine. Or, yeah, I'm good. It's like, well, I don't know. I kind of believe that words have a very profound effect. So if I just keep saying I'm brilliant, then I'll end up with very shiny skin, possibly. I don't know.
I completely agree with you, actually. I always tell people I'm fantastic. And then it enters into a whole conversation about why I'm fantastic. But I like you, I believe language has such an important impact on your life.
Absolutely, but how dare they say, how dare they ask, isn't it obvious that I am fantastic? Obvious. You know why I'm fantastic.
I do have one friend, and he always writes back and says, I'm an awesome bundle of fluffy fun. And I'm like, excellent, but I have no words to say for that anymore.
Well, that sounds like the kind of thing that you can buy from Ann Summers. It's like, oh, brilliant. Thanks very so much. I'll get that in a brown paper bag and take it home.
Now, Becky, what is an intuitive catalyst? What does that exactly mean that you do?
Well, I made it up. And because, the thing about having a very intense, high level of intuition is people get that confused with what other people call psychic. And I used to call myself a psychic when that was the only word I knew to describe a way of listening to people that most people don't do. And so with this level of listening, you're not just listening to the words that someone is saying to you, but you're listening to the spaces in between the words, their body language, their breath, everything about them. And by doing so, you start to know them in multiple ways of knowing. So there's ways in which we understand people that are not just through our logical mind. You can feel someone in your own body. You can feel them empathetically, where you can feel their own pain. You can feel them because you get flashes in your mind. I don't know if you've ever had this yourself. Somebody can be telling you a story, and it kind of becomes a catalyst for a story in your own mind of something that's happened to you in your own life, and that suddenly flashes up. And then you actually find that there's a very strong link between the two stories, almost like in that moment you become one person. And I found that if you actually get to understand someone in that level, as a kind of like a person who talks to people, well, that's not therapy. I can't say I'm a therapist. I don't spend ages kind of like being touchy-feely, hand-holdy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not actually in my personality. And so I decided to call myself a catalyst, because a catalyst is when you meet somebody or something happens and it creates change. And so when people meet me and I listen to them on that level, and then we can talk about it, so I can usually pull out stuff that they can't see for themselves and show it to them, then that is the catalyst for change. Because most people, when they come and see me or anyone, they're stuck, they're just stuck. And stuck to me is a holding point while you're waiting for more information. And to me, when you're listening to somebody, you can tell them what they can't hear about themselves. That gives them the information that they're missing, and then they're thus catalyst. That's a very long explanation for a very simple question, but hopefully that makes sense.
Well, what you're telling me is it has a whole different energy around it. So when people are entering into that relationship with you, rather than therapy, which has a very different connotation, the catalyst for me is it's just changing that energy around that session.
Absolutely, and also, I just can't call myself a therapist, partly because I didn't really qualify in anything. So, I just have fascination. So I've studied neuroscience, not like to the level of somebody who actually can dissect brains, but I'm fascinated by the brain and psychology and spirituality and what makes people get up and go. Because also, for me, looking at the brain, and levels of the way in which we think and how our lives and give our lives meaning. Some people give your life meaning, like we were saying at the top of the call, I'm fantastic. And yet other people perhaps who had only got attention when they were sick as a child will say, oh, I'm not feeling so well today. And the person that they're talking to go, oh no, are you all right? Like, you see this on Facebook where people put like having a really terrible day. I nearly said the other word, having a terrible day. And of course they want people to go, oh no, babe, what's wrong? And those are people, not all of them, I love my mass generalizations, but these are people who perhaps have gone through some tough stuff in their childhood, and that's when they got attention because they had busy working parents. Whereas for me, I got more attention when I was a tap dancing fool. Look, I can do this. Look at this. And so I tend to show off, and because that's my way of getting love out of people, so it kind of makes sense. But how we give life meaning is fascinating to me, because then that literally depicts whether or not you're going to look at the world as if you're living in a friendly universe or an unfriendly universe. And that creates your own decision.
It changes the emphasis on how you're living your life effectively, though, doesn't it?
Completely. Just completely. And also who you bring into your life. So you will always bring people into your life that prove you right. Oh, I got so excited. I don't know if you like Sherlock. Do you ever watch Sherlock?
I don't have a TV.
I've actually only just got a TV after 5 years of not having one, but I was watching Sherlock anyway. Sherlock and Doctor Who, the writers of these programs are, I think, evolutionary catalysts in their own way. And I'll just tell you this little scene in Sherlock, and you just go, "Oh, that's exciting." So there's this little scene in Sherlock where Watson finds out the true identity of his new wife, and he basically says, "But you chose her." He said, "But I didn't know she was this." He says, "But you did somehow know she was this. You chose her." And then he basically maps out his life. You're a doctor who ended up in war zones. Your best friend's a sociopath. Look, you chose this woman without knowing. And in actual fact, there is scientific evidence. There was a test done where they got a woman who had been in really abusive relationships, where she'd been, violently abused. And they put a group of men, one of them who'd been arrested for domestic violence. And there was the CSI lineup behind the glass. Well, that's what was going on. And she was asked, which of these, 5 guys would you like to date? And she points at him. Now, that's interesting. But then they put her in a lineup of women and ask her, and then ask him, the violent guy, to choose who he would like to date. And he chooses her. So somehow we have vibrational matches to people that we bring into our life experience. But I was so excited because they talked about that on Sherlock, and it was like, oh, this is going mainstream. I was so excited. Anyway, I get my kicks where I can.
I find it really fascinating. Just recently, there's been a piece of research come out about the fact that the scientists have poo-pooed sixth sense, which is almost like the psychic side of things that they've poo-pooed. But what they have talked about is how we're giving out so many messages all the time, and our senses are continually picking them up.
And also, it's quite interesting, and this is why I divorced myself from the word psychic, was simply because I made a realization that actually people who have a disposition to being dyslexic, who have more capacity in the right brain than they do in the left brain, people who are more on the Asperger's syndrome have more capacity in the left hemisphere, like remembering maths and numbers and dates, than they do in the right hemisphere. And so what lacks in someone who has Asperger's syndrome is what's known as social intuition. And what is in abundance in people who are dyslexic is social intuition. So it's very easy to be able to say, oh, there's no scientific proof for psychic ability, because psychic ability is the idea that you can predict the future, and it's some kind of like paranormal ability. Well, it's not a paranormal ability in as much as saying that someone who is on the Asperger's syndrome has a paranormal ability. So at the end of the day, these things can be proven by neuroscience. And so I think it's just the word psychic terrifies people, because, well, it terrifies anyone who lies, that's for sure, but it terrifies people because it's this frightening idea that there's people walking around as X-Men. And also as well, if that's your career, then forgive me, but do not brand yourself with something that people in the big consciousness of people they think it means fraud and fake and liar. And for me, it was so painful to have that word in association with the work I was doing. I mean, I got called a brazen cow by Darren Brown, which is probably one of my greatest claims to fame. And hurrah! And that man is so right. I am a brazen. But he was talking about he actually heard my radio show on LBC, which I don't have anymore. But he actually misquoted something I'd said completely, and you just think, oh, this is so irritating when there's so much great science out there that's actually proving all of this stuff. And the impact that it can actually have on making the world a better place, not just for the individual, but collectively.
And you do talk about that in your book, about the community aspect of actually working together and being more collective.
Yeah, because, I mean, really, that's the one thing we all want. But secretly, we're scared of each other. And we're scared of each other for lots of reasons. But we really don't really feel like we can open our hearts. People have to jump quite often through hoops before we feel like that. And the problem is there's two sides of a human. There is the fear-based side, which is also known as the ego, and there's the love-based side. And so most people end up getting wrapped up into this egoic belief that everybody is running their system purely from their ego and nothing else. And that's not true. People are running their lives from their heart, and they're running their lives from wanting to have connection and community. But the problem is people are being judged logically, statistically. It's very interesting that the stats of crime, the fear of crime, went up. You know, and I quite often think, well, it depends what they were showing on the telly, which is probably why you don't have a telly. But I think, you know, for me, there's two forms of intuition, which I talk about in the book, which is gut-led intuition and heart-led intuition. And gut-led intuition responds with the fight or flight responses in the brain, and it tells you who to avoid. But your heart-led intuition actually is like a bypass past the ego, where you actually see that this person is either frightened of you, or they're insecure, or there's some kind of other problem, and gives you the skills to be able, when somebody is distant or rejecting, it gives you the skills to be able to see whether or not it's because they don't like you, which makes us then, oh, I don't like them anyway, or whether or not it's because they don't like themselves and they feel there's a discord and they can't connect with you. So that's quite important, because we secretly really, really want to come together in community, but we don't want to come together in community with him. I'm just saying, his eyes are too close together, and I am not being put in a group with him. I just don't like him. And you go, right, and then you start talking to somebody else and go, have you seen him though? But look at him though. And they go, oh no, yeah, you're right. I think you're right. There's something. And this poor guy ends up energetically getting all of this coming at him. So he starts acting weird. And then everyone goes, yeah, you see, look, he's shifty, that one, shifty. And then before you know it, not only has he been ousted out into the cold and out of the tribe and out of the community group, and really all he was socially awkward. You know, and I think that's the kind of thing that your intuition can read that person and say that person actually needs pulling into the group, needs to feel safe, and they're going to flourish. But we'd rather get rid of something that we're frightened of rather than pull it in and watch it flourish.
Fascinating. Now, I do find it interesting about your insights into the whole gut intuition and listening to your gut, and then the ego side of it, because I'd never really made that connection, to be honest. I work typically as a naturopath, and you know, part of the work I do is about body wisdom and about listening to what your body's telling you. And I will always talk to people about getting in touch with their gut, because mostly their gut is quite out of balance, in honesty. So in effect, for me, enabling that to happen actually can change a lot of things for the client. But you actually made me rethink that approach and about the heart intuition, because I can see that, you know, you say in the book about how it actually can lead to them being less, almost expansive.
Yeah. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, the gut is really useful. It's a really, really useful tool. And what's happening is you actually have a brain inside of your gut that is responding to the outside world. And it's responding to the world through the solar plexus, because the solar plexus chakra, which is when we say yellow-bellied coward, what people are responding to is the yellow of the solar plexus. When it's really active, it's fearful. So when we're fearful, the yellow of the solar plexus becomes quite expansive, and what it's doing is it's reading energy in a space. So it used to be used for sensing predators when you were out hunting, or it used to be used for sensing, I don't know, attack from the neighbouring village, or whatever. Certainly when we had predators, it was for sensing what was going on with those things in the world. And that information then goes into the sacral chakra, which is the orange one. And that, I was like, the orange one. I tend to think like colours more than anything else. It's the orange one. And that chakra brings that information, the energetic information, into the gut brain. And then the gut will either make you feel sick, or your stomach goes tight, or as my grandmother used to put it, I feel it in the water. So you would feel it in the gut area. Now what the gut then does is very clever, because the gut then says, okay, so we've got a predator coming. So we need to send blood and oxygen to the muscles in the arms and legs, so that we can fight or we can run the hell away. So it's then corresponding, it goes sort of up through the spine and into the brain, that corresponds with the fight or flight part of the brain. There's actually 5 Fs, but we'll just stick with the 2. So let's get to the way. And so then we have blood in our arms and legs so that we can fight or run away. But the blood was doing something very interesting before it got taken out of the stomach. It was aiding your digestive system, and it was also aiding your immune system. So, of course, when people say, oh, I've been so stressed, and I get sick when I'm stressed, or this thing happens when I'm stressed, or I'm getting IBS symptoms, or they've done loads of medical checks, and I'm not celiac, and I'm not this, and I'm not that, and it's not IBS, but they cannot understand why I've got trapped wind or stomach pains, or I can't digest stuff, or, a lot of that is down to the amount that your solar plexus is working to see whether or not the world is a safe place or not. So for me, if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, maybe that's me, you would know if it was you if you also get bouts of deja vu as well. That can be something where you're so unsafe in the world that you're almost jumping forward a few seconds in time to see whether or not everything is safe. I know that sounds like a very strange thing to say. It's a perception rather than a reality. You're not really jumping forward in time, but the perception feels like you are. And so the main thing to do is not try and do anything with the chakras, is build your self-belief that you can trust yourself, that you can know if the world is a safe place or not. And by building self-belief and self-faith and self-confidence, the way to do all of those things is through your heart level intuition, through actually engaging your heart so that you're living balanced, so that you're living between your fear, is the world a safe place, and your heart, which is, how can I expand into a brilliant creative idea? Steve Jobs said that he used to use intuition for, all of the stuff that he was doing with Apple. This has also been something that Richard Branson has said. So how can you use it for great ideas? Maybe entrepreneurial stuff, maybe business, maybe, ideas at work, maybe ideas for your family. How can you use it to open your heart to your friends, your family, compassion-wise, and how can you really use your heart when you get that tense, fear-based thing because an email has come in. It used to be brown envelopes. My mother had a terrible fear of brown envelopes coming through the door. And literally, she'd go into fight or flight. She would clean the entire house before she would open that envelope because the energy went into her arms and legs, and she would clean. She would clean everything and then go and open the brown envelope. And nowadays, it's emails. It's coming at you from all directions. It's every single time your phone beeps. There's a rush of, oh my God, what is that? If you don't believe the world is a safe place. If you do believe the world is a safe place, then you're like, oh, I've got a message. We're interesting as human creatures. We really are.
We definitely are. I find it fascinating how people override their intuition all the time, though, and they don't listen to themselves. I had this very thing happen a few years ago. I was about to drive off a roundabout onto a dual carriageway and just knew it was completely the wrong thing for me to be doing, yet carried on. 10 minutes later, I was snowed in. 10 minutes after that, the police came down and were just checking that I was okay, digging myself out. Then exactly the same thing happened on the way back, and as they were towing me out of of the ditch on the way back, they said to me, didn't I learn the first time? And I thought it was really interesting because no, I hadn't. Why do people override their intuition?
Well, simply, I mean, we're taught at school, that the logical mind is the only way forward. And so your logical mind goes, well, this is the way I always travel home. This is the way that I always do. And if it makes you feel any better, I wrote a book on this. I did the same thing. So mine was heart-led intuition, excited feeling about turning left to go up this road. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to get lost there because if I go left, then I don't really know I'm going, and there's tiny windy roads, and I don't like those tiny windy roads when you can't pass other cars, and they're all on a hill, and So I carried on going straight, found myself caught in traffic, and I went, I can go up the side here. So sensible people are waiting in the right hand side, again, I'll just do the sensible thing, there's no traffic going up here. And someone flashed someone to turn right, which would cut across my lane. He didn't look, he cut across my lane, I just went into the side of him. And that's me with my heart-led intuition telling me, go left, there's traffic up ahead. And I'm like, no, it's fine. So the thing is, I think the problem is the egoic mind is so much what we're used to listening to. It's just so clear. It's the thing we're always listening to. So, we have to be fair to ourselves. It is really hard to bypass a voice in your head for a knowing that has no words. So you won't have had any words in your head. You will have created words when you tell the story, but there were no words. So the knowing is like a surge that's very easy to ignore. And so you ignore the surge because you can't put it into words. I remember when I wanted to move to San Francisco, I just knew I had to move to San Francisco. I knew it was like, it was not sensible. I had to give away all my stuff and I sold my house and I had to take the dog on a plane. This was not sensible. And I was at the height of my career. I knew I had to go, but trying to convince your mum, who's got a list of all of the reasons as to why you shouldn't be doing this, and you're selfish and cruel to the dog, and it's true, and all of this stuff, and all you can say is, and she's like, but you're not making any logical sense. Yeah, I know. And then when you get there, it's brilliant because when I kind of came back and the house price had dropped and I basically spent what I would have spent sitting in the house with it depleting in value, I spent that on a degree in San Francisco. And my mum just said, oh, you are clever, aren't you? It was clever. It wasn't smarts that made me make that decision. It wasn't that I had some secret insight into the economic climate. It wasn't. I just knew I had to go and do something, and I went with that knowing. So it's very difficult when people you love will talk you out of it. Not only just the logical mind in your head, but people who take care of you will go, what are you doing? I don't know what I'm doing. I just know it's right.
Yes, I found that story completely inspiring, actually, at the beginning of the book. And it totally made me laugh and very much resonated with me. But tell me about why authority figures, such as doctors and things like this, can completely convince my clients that there's nothing wrong with them because the test said there's nothing wrong with them. Yeah, my clients know. They just have this complete knowing, and when I start to work with them, they start to get better for a variety of reasons. But the test will be saying that there's nothing wrong with them.
Yeah, I've actually just written a worksheet for people called how to talk to a doctor.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because it's actually really, really important. And because as soon as you've got that lab coat, and I wrote it for a number of reasons. This is probably quite a shockingly serious thing to say. And I okay, do I want to tell the story? Yes, I do. I've started, so I'll finish. I love doctors. Okay, doctors are brilliant. They train and they are amazing. The thing is the thing about doctors is really everything that they need to know is insane. And we are really the amount that they need to know. And I've actually talked to doctors about this, where they say, I talked to one doctor who came up with this really brilliant thing. He said, one day you will nick something and shove it into a computer, and everything that is going wrong with on a slip based on a saliva sample, and then all of the medication that you need will come based on the medication that you're currently on and how it all corresponds with itself. Because it's not just a case of, what you're doing with the physical body. And of course, they're never looking at it from a completely holistic perspective, because they can't, because it's so massive anyway. And then cross-sectioning it with all of the other pills and chemicals and all of the other things that you're on, and your lifestyle, and the fact that they've only got 10 minutes to get it all done in. It's kind of a crazy situation. So I would not be a doctor for the life of me. However, that I don't know quite, like with certain careers, there's certain personality types that go into those careers, there's certain types of people. When I was 16, I went to go and see a doctor because, I don't know, I just thought I had thrush or something bizarre like that. And the doctor basically said, you're a big girl now. Do you want me to call a nurse? And of course you go, oh, you're a big girl now, meaning big girls don't need nurses to be in the room. Well, you can imagine where I'm going with this particular story, and I'm not going to a particularly great place. But when I got home, I told my mum about it, and bless her, she said, that can't have happened. That can't have happened because he's a doctor. And to actually have this kind of stereotype that we have about people in authority, that can't have happened as a doctor, or that can't be right because it's the police, or that can't be right because as soon as somebody puts a uniform on or a lab coat, and in actual fact this has been conducted in the Berkeley experiments when a bunch of students, some of them were given the title of prison officers, some of them given the title of prisoners, and the prison officers started to abuse the prisoners. And the crazy thing was, even though the prisoners knew that they were students, knew it was an experiment, knew the doors were open, didn't walk out. Human nature. That's what leads to holocausts. And I mean, I'm really over-exaggerating it here, but, it's kind of like going, eh. But I think it's so unbelievably important to be able to read intuitively the person sat in front of you beyond the hierarchical position or beyond the uniform, that you can actually read whether or not this person not just knows what they're doing, but where they are with you and how to communicate with them. And also sometimes when you're using intuition, there are ways in which you can communicate with people that get results that you're looking for, rather than going in there with a bolshy attitude or saying, listen, I researched my one set of symptoms on the internet. I'm now a leading authority. It's one set of symptoms, and you're an idiot because you don't know what I know. Well, no, they're not idiots. They know everything. They know something about everything, but you're now a specialist in one thing. You can see what I mean?
It is really interesting around that. Now, you brought up size, and I did think it was really interesting in the book when you talk about your boyfriend saying that you felt small, that he saw you as being small, and about you becoming more protective with your aura and things like that.
Tall moods, yes, the small moods and tall moods, yeah. Yeah, because I'm 5'2" on a bad day, and sort of I don't know, sort of 5'4" on a good day. But actually, you grow and you become more vibrant when you're in a good mood and feeling confident. You actually look taller, and then when you're not feeling so confident, you're feeling a little bit flat, because people actually describe it as being flat for a reason. You actually get shorter. It's really quite bizarre. So okay, so if you don't believe this, here's a test. If ever you're in a busy shopping centre or on public transport and it's really, really busy, decide that you look like a wasp, okay? So, like, imagine yourself with black and yellow stripes, a beak-like kind of, pointy thing at the front. Watch people get out of your way. And that is literally through your imagination, imagining yourself to look like a wasp. Now, obviously, if you want to do this experiment properly, you have to imagine that you're invisible. But be careful, because people will actually walk into you and bang into you like you're not there. So sometimes when you're feeling low or down or fed up, and you literally feel invisible in the world, and then people do knock into you, or they act as if you're not there, or you don't get served in the queue, or someone queue jumps you, and you're like, why is it on a bad day that people do horrible things? And it's not that they're doing horrible things. It literally is the fact that you have become invisible, and you actually have to change how you're feeling in order to kind of like stop the bad things happening to you. It sounds strange, but just test it. It really works.
No, the reason I brought it up was because in a previous relationship, now I'm 5'3", so effectively I'm not that tall by any stretch of the imagination, even in heels. And I was with someone who basically told me for the last 6 months of the relationship how small I became, and lots of people around me were saying I seemed to be becoming smaller and smaller, and I couldn't really understand this. And then I listened to my clients who will say the same sort of thing, and that when they're walking out of the room, how tall they feel after the therapies. And suddenly, it kind of, your book helped me to see that and see what was happening there. I did think it was fascinating insight.
Yeah, it is. And you kind of think, wow, there's more to you that's actually going on than your physical self, than your physical being. There's your energetic being. There's so much of you. So it is properly interesting, that. I do find that fascinating. But, and it's very good, because if you do go into a place where you want to be tall, you can literally puff yourself out. You can literally puff yourself out. I have had some very, very tall boyfriends, and people never make comment about, oh my God, look at that height difference between you two, unless I'm in a bad mood, and then people will actually make comment going, oh, you look really cute. Not cute.
Now, funny. I found it quite profound when you actually say in the book that when people have lost their intuition, they realise that they stop being happy at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and because your intuition is actually it can only be reached in the part of the brain that actually is your creativity, your excitement, your enthusiasm. So, this is why I wrote the book You Do Know, called it You Do Know, because you do know what you want in your life. You do know. It's just learning to act on the intuition instantly that makes you actually go through with it. The problem is if you're in a bad mood, or you're in a fearful place and you're screaming out for your intuition to help you, you're actually in the wrong part of the brain for your intuition to speak to you, because part of the fight or flight response is also freeze. And you just become gone. You can't get yourself into a part where you need to become creative. And you would know this, like if anyone asks you a question and your brain goes blank. My brain has gone blank on my own name. What's your name? I don't know. Just in that moment of fear, So I remember being pulled over by the police in America, and when I was driving, and I've watched too many TV shows, like CSI and things like that, and pulled over. And he said, "What's your name?" I just couldn't speak. And he actually ended up searching the car because I think he thought I was on drugs. So I was saying, I'm an English girl, please leave me alone. So it's really scary. But I think really the thing to do is, if you're trying to find answers to things and you're trying to get into your intuition, just put some music on. I do a thing called musicals therapy where I sing really badly to the songs and shows. But I tell you, it really opens my heart and it changes my mind and opens my intuition. And usually by the second running of Defying Gravity from Wicked, I have the answers. And I also find that dancing does the same thing. Stick a bit of Kylie on, a bit of a guilty pleasure, stick a bit of Kylie on, and before you know it, you're in the right part of the brain to be able to hear your intuition. So anything that makes you happy is actually better to stop what you're doing. If you're stuck on something, go and do something else and come back to it, and you'll know the answer by the time you come back. This is also why people say sleep on it, because you go into the right part of the brain to be able to access your intuition when you're asleep. And so your intuition tells you what it's been trying to tell you all day. Some very bizarre things to do for some very traumatic experiences. I can't divulge, but you just think, wow, like to actually just play this piece of music and pretend that you're the kids from Fame, and actually kind of like curing years of trauma off the back of one of your parents being murdered is like, wow. It's but actually it's, and again, like, and you must find this in your own work, just your intuition just goes, oh my God, your logic mind goes, I cannot suggest that. And your intuition's going, yeah, do it. And you do it, and the person looks at you and raises an eyebrow, but they go and do it so that they can come back and tell you it didn't work, and then it does work. And they're like, yeah, I can't believe you told me to do that, it was brilliant. it's a great privilege to be able to be there at those breakthrough moments in people's lives. I think that's one of the things I love the most about my job. I love those breakthrough moments.
Fascinating. Now, do you have to relearn to trust yourself?
I think we can blame ourselves for all sorts of things, and you can kind of like be kicked in the nuts by life quite a lot. And then we think it's our own fault. I didn't listen to my intuition, and we judge ourselves to be the same person who made the mistake. And I actually think, no, you're the person who lived beyond what happened, and you have grown and learnt from it. You know, it doesn't get to become a lesson unless you make it a lesson by having 20/20 hindsight about it. And that's why keeping journals is a really good idea, because then you can keep a journal on events and kind of actually really see the tide mark of change going through your life where you're growing. But unfortunately, most people sort of go, oh, I'm an idiot, I screwed up, and then therefore I'm a colossal idiot. No, you're the educated person that learnt from the screw up. You're not the idiot that created the screw up. So I think, to me, self-faith and belief in yourself is far more important than confidence or anything else, really. It's just to trust yourself. Because then you don't need to trust anybody else, because then you trust yourself to make good decisions about other people. So then you can open your heart because you know who to open it to. And you can intuitively understand why and see whether or not it's your stuff or theirs. And then you can work with that. Because sometimes, you know, we live in a world where you're stuck with people. You know, you are. And if you work with people, you have to be able to find ways to be able to love them, even if you absolutely can't stand them. And otherwise, you're going to end up with a very, very miserable life with lots of people who are mean to you. You have to find ways to be able to find the good in people. Not like, oh, let's just find the good in everybody, but workable good. So I was always getting bullied in work. When I used to work, I worked in theatre, and I was constantly, in every job, there'd be a very strong, dynamic woman who would bully me. And I thought, my God, you know, the common denominator is me. You know, I show up and she shows up. Why? What am I doing? And I suddenly realised that I was that powerful woman. I had all of the things that she had. When I started to look for what I really liked about her, I liked the fact that she could be a bitch, because I couldn't be. I liked the fact that she was very strong. I liked the fact, and then I suddenly realised it was everything I repressed in me. And I went, my God, I don't want to be nasty to other people using this power. But what she's trying to do is she's scared of me. She's intimidated by the power I'm repressing. So I actually stopped repressing myself in that way, trying to be a nice person. I just stopped repressing myself. I didn't turn into a nasty person, but literally that woman then stopped being the other half of myself, and she started being nice to me, and I have never been bullied by a woman since. I've had situations where women speak to me in a particular dominant, suppressing way, but because I don't put up a hard board against them, I don't get suppressed. Because I just basically put up my sense of humour, which is, whatever, daft. You know, it's fluid, and then we don't end up with a jarring problem. So I think, you know, being able to intuitively read all of that stuff, you become your own psychologist. So you can actually become your own intuitive psychologist. I'm actually going to be doing a workshop on this soon in Cheltenham at the Isborne Centre, because I do think that psychology and intuition go really well hand in hand for you to be able to reflectively look at yourself with very open eyes.
Do you think that most people want to look at themselves with very open eyes, though, in all honesty?
Yeah, I do, if they want happiness. Mm-hmm. Because you think you're going to look at yourself and find only bad stuff. Why? Why would you look at yourself and find only bad stuff? Why would you not want to look at yourself and just actually see the full enormity of who you are? You're already acutely aware of the bad stuff. You know, we all are aware of our own bad stuff, because that's the stuff that's holding you back. That's the stuff that's making you miserable. It's the stuff that makes you unhappy. So if you really looked at yourself, is that what you would find? Probably not. You'd probably find stuff that you've put in front of the amazingness that you are, because your enormity fears you more than your smallness.
That's really interesting. So you're telling me it's more of a fundamental process in many respects than just relearn to trust. There's all these other aspects to it: your belief, values, principles. Oh
yeah. Oh, I love values. Yeah. You know, Do you remember Weeble Wobbles? Like Weebles Wobble, but they don't.
I didn't realise anybody else knew that.
Whoever knows. And I used to love Weeble Wobbles, and egg-shaped people with a way to them. And to me, you know, my mission in life is to become a Weeble Wobble, but perhaps without the figure. So it's to always have something that if life pushes me around, that I don't fall over. I can leave, but I don't fall over. And to me, your values become your Weeble Wobble. So they're the weight in your Weeble Wobble. So when I have a set of values, I always have top three values. Mathematically, I have 3 top values. And those, sometimes they change, but those values mean that I have to have also discipline about sticking to those values. So if I meet someone, say, I don't know if it's dating or a best friend or something like that, and they don't share those top 3 values, I can't have them in my life. And I know that might sound like really harsh, but actually only the people who have caused me heartache, pain, annoyance, you know, have betrayed me, have hurt me, have stolen from me, have lied to me, are people who didn't have those top 3 values. And all the friends that I have that share those top 3 values, you just have great friendships with them and great relationships with them. So I think finding out what's really important to you. So freedom is one of my values. So people who deny me my freedom by lying to me about certain things, that denies my freedom of choices. So as soon as somebody says, oh, just tell them you're ill, or tell them you're busy, or just tell them blah, blah, blah. As soon as I hear a just say this, or just say that, my hackles go up, because at some point that person will do that to me. And they'll just say something to me like, oh, I'm really sorry, I can't like blah, blah, blah because I'm ill, or I can't blah, blah, blah because of that. And you're like, I know that's not true, but I can't call you on it. Because to call someone on being a liar is a bigger faux pas than being one in our society. And so then you end up in this kind of like stuck position where you can't be honest. You can't then trust them to be doing what it is that they said that they were going to do. And then you're really up against it. And then you end up becoming bitter, resentful and angry for everything that you ever gave them on one thing. But actually, you've only got yourself to blame, because if you ever heard them say, just say this, you knew at some point they'd do it to you. So you have to just pull yourself back from that person and not have, if this is important to you, you might not care. You might be a person who just says, and then you like the freedom of just being able to lie about stuff. But people always know when you're lying. They just are too frightened to tell you. And then I think if you're not true to your word, you don't have any true friendships. Nothing is true if you're not true to your own word. Sound like I've become a part of political broadcasting for the moralistic party, but I do actually think that this stuff, you know, so many times that I meet people who are so upset because somebody, you know, they've said something to somebody and they didn't believe them, and then they're like, why didn't they believe me? Well, because you weren't telling the truth. Yeah, but why didn't they believe me?
I have a very intuitive, it's a colleague, but also she's a friend, and she will clearly tell you if you don't mean something. And it can be very funny having a conversation with her. And I've been in a room where we've been in a group with other therapists, basically doing kind of a share. And the lead of the group, and he won't mind me telling this, when he's promised to do something, everybody knows he's unlikely to do it because he's absolutely hopeless with paperwork and administration, and we'll all love him because of that. But she will clearly just say, no, you won't do that. And it is absolutely hilarious. And I don't know if it's to do with her culture, because she doesn't come from Britain, so everybody else is British, so effectively we all go, oh yes, of course you'll do that. And but she will just clearly say, no, you won't do that, so who else wants to do it? And she'll just pass the work on to somebody else.
But I love that, because that person's getting stuff done, whereas everybody else is just kind of like, oh, you can't call him on it. He probably believes in that man. He's got full intentions of doing it, but secretly knowing, oh, I don't want to do it though. I think the more honest we can be like that, the more we get things done. You know, I certainly wish that politicians would be more like that. Yeah. I intend to, but I can't promise. I think that's what I always say. If I'm not sure I'm going to do something, I'll say I intend to do it. and then there's my get out. But if I say I will do something, no matter what the weather is like, no matter what is, I will do it. That's it. I've said I'm going to do it. I have to do it. I'm very determined with that stuff.
Now, earlier you mentioned Steve Jobs and Richard Branson, and you actually mentioned in the book Thomas Stanley's work into the mindsets of millionaires, and it is a fascinating. If anyone's not read this book out there, it's called The Millionaire Mind, and it looks at the behaviours, habits, and mindsets of millionaires. And he discovered that basically lots of these people are working on intuition.
Yeah, unbelievable. And you know, it was brilliant. Radio 4, I don't know, it must be about a month ago now, they had like top CEOs of 3 of these big companies. The one I remember is there was a chap there that was in connection with Barclays and also BT. And all of them were talking about mergers and takeovers. You know, when does one big company take over another company? When does it merge with another company? And they were talking about the analytics that goes into that. You know, they're talking to lawyers and this thing and that thing and the money that they're buying it for, the business deal. They were going through the entire kind of, you know, 80 odd people behind a merger, the meetings, all of the stuff that happens. And then finally the interviewer for BBC 4 said, so what does it really come down to, you know, at the end of the day? And they all just went, gut feel. and I just was like, wah! You know, like nearly crashed the car. And, wow. And they basically said, you know, there's something inside of you. And then they started talking on a completely different tangent. And they were saying, the thing is quite often it doesn't look good on paper. It doesn't seem like the right thing. And yet you take over this company and then you find that something emerges that you didn't see was there. And you change the company down a direction, a completely different direction. So say, for example, it was a shoe manufacturer that had a sideline in making tents or something. And they're like, yeah, we want the shoe manufacturing thing, la, la, la. And then they suddenly look at it and realise, actually, the tent manufacturing would be much. And some other like business deal comes in where there's a need for tents, you know, Glastonbury's run out, whatever. You know, and it suddenly becomes something completely different. And he said it's all just basically you're following your intuition. And so if these kind of like top business people are all talking about following their gut instinct, or, you know, I was like, let me send you my book. You know, even, I mean, The Voice is just back on the TV at the moment. You wouldn't know that you don't have a TV, but The Voice is back on. And Will I Am is still going on about following his gut. I swear to God, I'm going to be in the audience of that show one day, and I'm just going to march down the front. I'm going to slap my book on his desk, on that big red button, and just go, stop following your gut and listen to the and you think far better things. Listen to this. So, you know, well, you know, in my fantasy land that kind of happens, and then I sit on his knee. Anyway, there's a whole different thing. Actually, I think the man on the opposite side of the room I also quite like. Anyway, moving on. Got a bit of a crush happening.
What you've reminded us of, though, there, and his work shows that, you know, we are far more than we can imagine. You know, we are truly intelligent beings, and you make this point in your book.
Yeah, truly intelligent, brilliant. I mean, you know, this is a really difficult thing to say, but I don't know about you, but I think people who have gone into, you know, the healing arts, who are helping people, there's 2 types of people that go into, you know, helping other people. Help's not the right word, perhaps, but go into healing other people. I believe that they are split very clearly into 2 camps: people who love human beings and people who hate them. and I am in the latter camp, which is, I absolutely, honestly, as a species, what a despicable bunch. You know, as a species, humanity is proper minion. You know, I can't think of a really good word. Yet individually, I just love them. So how can I, you know, hate humanity for, you know, destroying the planet, killing the whales, murdering each other, creating wars, creating chemical weapons, nuclear weapons? Just don't even get me started. Just nasty bunch. But the human potential to overcome all of that is literally like the fight between good and evil inside of ourselves going on all of the time. all superhero stories are basically about the fight. And I love superhero comics. I'm quite, I love all those, especially all of the ones that have been turned into films, like V for Vendetta, The Crow, X-Men. But all of these things are literally about the fight between good and evil that is residing inside of ourselves. And so I decided, really, that I wanted to fight on behalf of the superhero that exists in all of ourselves, to call out the superhero that is in everybody else. Because we are always fighting, Lex Luthor or whatever it is, inside of ourselves, our ego, or our higher self, or our love self, and our fear, because it's fear that drives this stuff. It's not that we are, greedy, manipulative, nasty inherently. We are scared to death. And the reason why we are greedy and manipulative and bomb each other is not nuclear bombs were created to protect, if I've got this, then you can't, invade. They were always there from a tool of fear, not a tool of evil. Nothing has been created, as far as I can see, as a tool of evil. Everything has always been created through a tool of fear. So is fear evil? Possibly is. But it's always about insecurity. It's always about lack. It's always about, that stuff. And yet we have the consciousness to understand that we are not that. We have the consciousness to understand that it is just fear. And so really, to me, to pull out the superhero in another human being, there will be a tipping point. There will be a tipping point where 51% of the population all say, I've had enough of being scared. I've had enough of feeling limited. And I'm going to embrace my inner superhero. And I'm just going to live my life from a place of seeing myself as a superhero. And by doing so, once we reach that tipping point, it's, it's the 100 monkeys, it's the morphic field, it's the law of resonance, it's all of that stuff. And look up those words and then you'll understand what we're talking about. But that shift of consciousness happens, and then we all start coming from that loving place. And that's what I'm fighting for, because quite frankly, if I believe the latter, I don't know if you know this, but I think it's the third highest killer, especially of young men, is suicide. And that's because they can't find that superhero inside of themselves, and all they can see is this fear and bleakness. And that's everything that we end up being surrounded by. But when we actually find it inside of ourselves, we see it in everybody else. You have found your inner superhero. You find it in everybody. It just shines out in everybody. It's remarkable. But I know when I've lost it, because I think everyone's an arse. But when I found it, I'm like, oh, everyone's amazing. I love everybody. This is why, if I have a client and the client and I don't make a connection, I won't work with the client. I refund the money. Unless I'm feeling love for the client within the first 5 minutes, I don't continue working with the client, because I've lost something inside of myself if I can't see love in them. And we need to meet at another time, or we need to not meet at all, because we're just a mismatch. And you can have mismatches when something is so dark and so difficult. Yeah, you can, but predominantly, people are great, really.
I love the metaphor of the superhero, because I believe that you have to be your own biggest inspirer, and you can't look outside for that. You have to be motivated to actually inspire yourself, because if you have that sort of energy, then you can't go wrong with it in many respects.
No, exactly. You can't go wrong with it. And you know what? Even if this is all a bunch of nonsense and we're just making it up, life is actually just about making it up. We are going around something that's on fire. Held down by gravity, which cannot be proven by science, which is alarming. I think there's elastic band involved, but ultimately we have not really got a clue. You can make meaning through religion. You can make meaning through I'm a superhero. You can make meaning out of tissues if you want. The point is we don't know why we're here, what we're doing. We don't understand life and death. We don't know anything for sure. And so we make it up. We make meaning. And so for me to make meaning that everything is a miracle makes me happy. And so what if I'm completely wrong and Richard Dawkins is right and we live, we breathe, we die, we rot? So what? At the end of the day, it's about how you feel. And if it is just one life, I'd rather spend one life making up a load of nonsense that makes me feel happy than one life going, well, this is it then. This will be it then. I can't even, and self-righteously having existential angst. Why? I don't see the point in that myself.
Today on Food for Thought, I've been talking to the most fantastic Becky Walsh, author of You Do Know, an intuitive catalyst and super heroine. Hell yeah! It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and really, really funny. And I haven't stopped the mic from picking up my laughter, so the IT team are probably going to go mad later. How do people get in contact with you? Go on the workshop that you've mentioned, find out more about you, etc., etc.
There's loads of stuff. So if you go on beckywalsh.com, all the W's obviously, Becky Walsh, not spelt Neil Donald Walsh wise, it's BECWALSH.com. And I've got a retreat in Thailand coming up. I've got a retreat in the Isle of Man coming up. I've got a couple of workshops coming up. I'll be at Mind Body Spirit in London. I've got a workshop at Cheltenham. I've obviously got the book You Do Know, Learning to Act on Intuition Instantly. I've got other books coming up, and I'm also doing some special offers for next month for Valentine's Day. If anyone needs consultations around the subject of relationships, there's free stuff coming with them and discounts and things. So sign up to the mailing list on beckywalsh.com and you'll find out all about that.
She's sharing the love with you guys.
Yes, I am.
Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Debbie. Thanks for having me.